Hey, this is Michael Lennon with the band Venice, and you're listening to our favorite Lennon family historian, Lisa Louise Cook, on the Genealogy Gems podcast.
Welcome to the Genealogy Gems podcast, providing quick and innovative ways to make the absolute most out of your research time and creative ideas for sharing and displaying your family history. I'm your host, Lisa Louise Cook. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 47 of the Genealogy Gems podcast. It's fun to hear from Michael Lennon from the band Venice. I hope you had a chance to hear episode 38 in our interview, where we got to know the Lennon brothers and cousins of the famous Lennon sisters from Lawrence Welk show fame. And speaking of the Lennon sisters, Kathy and Lennon will be joining us on the podcast in June to talk about the Lennon sisters' career. They celebrated their 50th anniversary in show business in 2005, and we want to talk about her love of family history and a wonderful adventure that she has gone on with her sister Janet called Best Pals. Kathy and Janet Lennon have always been inseparable, and when they were little girls, their mom, Sis, and their grandmother, Nana, made them a pair of cloth rag dolls that looked just like them. Well, Kathy and Janet have painstakingly replicated those original rag dolls, and they call them Best Pals, just like they are. It's a wonderful story of honoring their grandmother and their mother and celebrating the importance of family and sisterhood. Well, I'm really excited to announce that Genealogy Gems premium members are going to have a chance to win a pair of Best Pals dolls, one blonde and one brunette, just like Kathy and Janet. The dolls will come tucked into a Best Pals tote bag and come with certificates of authenticity signed personally by Kathy and Janet. So stay tuned, and you'll be hearing more about that in the coming weeks. And speaking of contests, in today's episode, I'm going to announce the premium member winner of the drawing for an ancestor handwriting analysis by Paula Sassy, our favorite certified graphologist. I know you guys have been waiting for that. And in today's handwriting gem, Paula's going to analyze the signature of one of my husband's ancestors. You know, this may be the case with you. You may only have a signature on a document rather than an entire letter like I was lucky enough to have with my grandfather, which Paula analyzed in episode 46. But there's a lot that Paula can discern from a simple signature. So all that's coming up later in the show. In the Genealogy Gems news blog, you'll find some fun articles, including a Mother's Day tribute to my mom and a TV blast from the past with a sort of a genealogical twist. The blog article is called, "What Do You Do When Family Isn't Family?" And it's about a fun episode of the old TV series, Who's the Boss, that I found on a great website called Hulu.com. That's HULU.com. And check it out because I know you'll enjoy it. You can actually watch the video right there from my blog. And of course, you can get to the blog by going to genealogygems.tv and clicking blog. Well, it's really been a busy couple of weeks here, that's for sure. There's been lots of things happening. And at the end of the show, I'm going to tell you some really exciting news that I told you was coming in the last newsletter email. But first, we are off to the mailbox. Well, here in the mailbox, I have a very nice email from Heather Redenbaugh of California that I'd like to share. She writes, "I found your podcast on iTunes a few months ago, and I love it." Oh, that's great. Thank you, Heather. She says, I've listened to them all when I'm driving around town and when I take my trips to LA for work. I am new to genealogy, but have used your tips and resources to compile a lot of information in a short time. I cannot stop thinking about my ancestors. I am completely addicted. Well, that's not a bad kind of addiction to have now, is it? That's great. I know what you mean when you get into it, and particularly when you're first getting started. It's exciting. So that's great. Now, Heather wanted to share the following that she found. She writes, "I found a wealth of information about several generations of my family at the University of Wisconsin Digital Collection. My mother was thrilled to see a picture of a young great-aunt Polly and Google pointed the way. And Heather has included a photo of the lovely Aunt Polly, which you can see in the show notes for this episode, number 47. And I'll also have a website link to that University of Wisconsin digital collection, so you can go check that out as well. So thanks so much for taking the time to write, Heather. And if you would like to drop me an email and share how your research is going, or comment on the podcast, or if you have a question to ask, you can write me at genealogygemspodcast@gmail.com.
Profile America, Thursday, May 22nd. This was a big day in the careers of two of the nation's most beloved television stars, who practiced their craft in two widely different settings. It was on this day in 1967 that Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was first seen. Host Fred Rogers entertained and educated youngsters for 34 years. And it was on this date in 1992 that Johnny Carson last appeared on The Tonight Show, after almost 30 years of dominating late-night television with sophisticated comedy and interviews. In the 60s, when both Rogers and Carson began, there were about 53 million homes with television sets. Today, that number is more than twice as large. You can find these and more facts about America from the U.S. Census Bureau online at census.gov.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly day in this beauty wood, a neighborly day for a beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you, so let's make the most of this beautiful day. And since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please won't you be my neighbor? Neighbors are people who are close to each other. So that's what we are right now, you and I. We're neighbors. I like it. You? I have always wanted to have a neighbor.
That's Fred Rogers singing Be My Neighbor. And it's from an album actually from my childhood that I still have called Won't You Be My Neighbor? Mr. Rogers sings of special things in childhood. And it's from 1967, the year that the show first came out. And yes, I'm playing it on my old Fisher-Price record player. Can you believe that? Oh gosh, all the memories. It's amazing how music becomes intertwined with our memories, isn't it? We were really lucky to have Mr. Rogers in our childhoods, and I know my kids were just as enamored with him as I was when I was a kid. And I always liked Captain Kangaroo, too. I loved the moose and the rabbit puppets. Of course, I always loved puppets. And they were around for a long time before the Sesame Street puppets came along. But I especially liked when the captain would read a story. They would film the pages of the book, remember that? Real close up, and the camera would sort of move along with him as he spoke, so it actually looked like the story was in motion, kind of, like a cartoon, but it wasn't a cartoon. It was just the pages of the book. And he had such a soothing voice and could make any story sound absolutely wonderful. And when I was really little, I remember my sister got to be on a show called Captain Satellite. I was probably 3 or 4 at the time, and we went to the studio, and I was feeling pretty jealous because she got to go on this show. But while they were filming, I started wandering around a little bit, and I found the Romper Room set right next door. And there was the little chair where the Romper Room teacher would sit, and yes, I saw the magic mirror. That was pretty much the most spectacular thing that had happened to me up until that point, and to look at and touch the Romper Room magic mirror. It didn't matter to me that no one was there and the lights were down, but I was a very happy camper and I completely forgot about wanting to be on Captain's satellite. Well, it's funny, I did a little bit of snooping around the web and I found a great website if you enjoy old television. It's called tvparty.com. And I was actually checking out the Romper Room page, and it said the reason why there are no Romper Room shows from way back then, because, I was looking on YouTube to see if I could find any videos. Well, they don't exist because the shows were erased to tape the next day's show. Oh well, they'll always be our memories.
I'm a Romper Room doobie, a doobie all day long.
Doobie, a sidewalk player.
Doobie, a sidewalk player. Don't be a street player. Don't be a street player.
Doobie, a car sitter.
Doobie, a car sitter. Don't be a car stander. Don't be a car stander.
Doobie, a plate cleaner.
Doobie, a plate cleaner. Don't be a food fussy. Don't be a food fussy.
Doobie, a play safe.
Doobie, a play safe. Don't be a match toucher. Don't be a match toucher.
Sidewalk player.
Sidewalk player.
Car sitter.
Car sitter.
Plate cleaner.
Plate cleaner.
Play safe.
Play safe. Ooh, I always do what's right. I never do anything wrong. I'm a Romper Room doobie, a doobie all day long.
When I was at the Family History Expo in St. George, Utah a couple of months ago, I spent a lot of time visiting with conference goers at the Genealogy Gems podcast booth. And often while classes were being conducted, things would slow down the exhibit hall and we exhibitors would just take a breather. And I couldn't help but notice the beautiful booth directly across from me. Charlene Dimmick of Family Tree and Me had some absolutely gorgeous pedigree charts on display. It's really a shame to call them charts because they were truly works of art for display in the loveliest of living rooms. What really caught my eye about her display was that each photograph of each person appeared uniform, even though obviously the photos were taken at very different times. Charlene has a terrific process for sort of neutralizing or removing the background, which achieves two things. It creates a real uniformity to the photos that creates kind of an overall very pleasing artistic design. And by removing the background, you really can focus in on the person rather than some huge palm tree behind them. Well, during one of our conference breaks, I finally got the chance to scurry over to the Family Tree and Me booth and chat with Charlene about her beautiful displays. Here's my interview with her. I'm here with Charlene Dimmick at the Family History Expo, and you're with Family Tree and Me. So your display is beautiful. Tell our listeners what you do and a little bit about your company.
Okay, Family Tree and Me, we create pictured pedigrees. So we take your pictures and we personalize it and customize it and create art pieces, not just informational charts that you would put in an office, but we like to create art pieces that you would put in your living room. So we've got different backgrounds, different border designs, different elements that we can add to that. We've got 3 different sizes, but they are then custom framed, so they're actually art pieces. I think it came from the idea that I'm a visual learner. So when I have pictures, I like to know how I'm related to them and who I look like, and so that you can actually see your ancestors there, and it becomes not just an art piece, but a heritage piece, and more importantly, a conversation piece. So it'll generate interest and questions about who they are and more about them, so that they become people and they have personalities and they're not just names and dates on a pedigree chart.
Now, I know that you have a website. It's www.familytreeandme.com. Can people go and actually order through the website and be able to have this shipped to them?
Yes, exactly. When they go to that website, they will see different examples of what they could order. They can choose, we've got about 51 different background selections, and then they can choose those different elements that I talked about, border designs, etc., adding a line, and then they can download information sheets that they fill out for their dates and the names, and then they can also download an order sheet. At this point in time, we don't have the shopping cart. That's a feature to come. But a lot of the information that we'll do will be back and forth, either phone calls or through email. And then once I have your pictures, and I can get them in one of three ways. One is you can just send them to me in a high-resolution JPEG or TIFF. The second way is if you scan them and put them on a disc, and then they send them to me in a CD, a little disc. Or the third way is to actually send me the photos, and I'll scan it and do the rest of it. And then once that's done and it's all created and you've chosen the layout that you want, and those layouts are on the website so they can see them. Once that's chosen, then I will send through email the end result, and then you can see if there's anything you want to change, any colors, oh, you don't like this, or oh, we did a typo here. They do the proofing, and once they give the final approval, then we ship it off. It's printed. They can choose to do custom framing, or they can just choose to have it as the print, or they can choose to have it on the foam board, one of three ways, and we just want to please them and have this become that family heirloom.
And what's really neat is you have two different ways to look at it. Of course, there's the pedigree chart and there's the descendant chart. And the descendant chart is beautiful. I could see giving that to, grandparents or just family members. But the pedigree chart, what a wonderful idea for a wedding gift. I can see there's a lovely young couple in the beginning of this one, and then it goes out from there. So you could do a little bit of research on the bride or groom-to-be and put together something that could not only be displayed at the wedding, but be a wonderful gift to the happy couple.
Well, exactly. In fact, that's kind of how this whole thing started, is we created one for my son when he got married. And so we got her side of the family and all the information in the pictures, and then display that instead of the bridal portrait. It's so traditional to walk in, and there in the lobby you see the bridal portrait of the bride, and yet we wanted something to have both sides, and we have the little captured line of a blending of love and lives. And it was quite the conversation piece there, because as family members would come through, they'd find themselves, or oh, there's great grandpa, so it was really fun. And from that it just sort of snowballed, and it's where we are today.
And finally, I think what really strikes me as well is it appears that you've got photos here that are they all have consistent backgrounds. Now, obviously, not each person and ancestor had their picture taken with the same photographer, so it looks like you have a technique by which you can kind of extract the portrait of the person and then create this uniform background, so it's really pleasing to the eye. You don't have this jumble of variety of backgrounds that are taking away from those beautiful faces.
Thank you for noticing. Yes, we're very meticulous about that. Sometimes the old pictures that you have, it's a grouping, and you say, well, that face of those 12 people, that's my great-grandmother. So what we do is we extract it from that, and we do put it on a uniform background, and we do all of these in black and white pictures. So we not only go back with the ancestors, but we have what's a 3 or a 3+, and the plus means that we drop down to the children's line. So there's a 4, which means the 4 generations, or a 4+, which is dropped down to the children. We also do it plus, where it drops down to the grandchildren. So, and I bring that up because nowadays, you're going to be wearing red in a picture. You're going to wear a striking turquoise something, and you'd look right to that particular thing. And yet we do all of ours in the black and white. So we do a grayscale mode, so that it is all uniform, and we have similar lightings, and we tweak all of that with, again, the graphic designers do that, so that it can just kind of be a blend, and it just all pulls together as the art piece.
If you would like to picture your pedigree in one of her beautiful charts, I encourage you to check out the Family Tree and Me website at familytreeandme.com. Our next gem is going to hopefully prevent you from ever missing another relative's birthday. It's a great website I came across called birthdayalarm.com. And I started using it last year, and boy, has it bailed me out more than once. So I wanted to be sure and tell you about it, because while it has an application for your current day family, I think there might be some genealogical applications for this as well. You just enter the names and birth dates or anniversaries, whatever the event is, into your free Birthday Alarm account. And then about a week or so before the event, Birthday Alarm will send you an email reminding you about the event. Isn't that great? Oh, and you know how we get. Sometimes we procrastinate, so Birthday Alarm will email you again a few days ahead just to make sure that you've made note of it. And you can really easily send greeting cards from the website or flowers or whatever you want to do, or you can just simply use the alarm service so that you never have to forget another birthday or anniversary. And if you're like me, that's a really cool tool. And you can even set up reminders for holidays. I mean, now I look like a very conscientious person because I'm rarely ever late sending out cards, and I love that. It's a great way to stay in touch with those more distant relatives and contacts that you've made through the years doing your genealogy research. I mean, wouldn't it be nice to send a card or a note on their birthday like my cousin Carolyn recommended in episode 28 when she was talking about interviewing people? And it's just really nice to stay in touch after you get the information that you're looking for. So then I got to thinking, why not take it a step further? You could enter some of your prominent ancestors' birthdays into Birthday Alarm. And that way, you would get an email reminding you that the day is coming, and you could make note of it in your genealogy blog or in a family newsletter that you send out, that type of thing. Or you could use it as a prompt to send an email to a list of contacts that you've been working with over the years to research that particular ancestor. Say, hey, happy ancestor's birthday. It's just another great way to stay connected and let folks know that you really appreciate them and all the help they've given you over the years. And if you have children, why not use the ancestor's birthday alarm to generate a dinner time conversation about that ancestor on their special day? You could have a photo displayed on the table at dinner time, and you could tell stories about them, and you could teach your children about that side of your family. Sometimes I think we just need a nudge, to do things that strengthen our families. And I think birthdayalarm.com is really a great tool for that. So be creative and go try it out. It's at birthdayalarm.com. Oh, and don't forget, my birthday is February 5th. My favorite color is pink. Oh, any kind of jewelry is really a terrific choice for me. And actually, I love candy. Our next gem comes to us from my good friend James Mowat of the History Zine podcast from England. Jim will be taking us on a historical linguistic journey, preparing us with expert advice on girding our loins. Let's listen in, shall we?
And now our linguistic history trivia bit. I want to talk to you about girding your loins. You've probably heard the phrase girding your loins or to gird your loins, and it usually means to get ready for something. But it's such a strange phrase, so I was determined to find out what it is, why it is, where it came from, and why we use this phrase. And one of the first recorded uses of this phrase is by Paul writing to the Ephesians in a Roman jail, and he uses the phrase to girt your loins with truth, which is quite an odd usage. I presume it just means to get ready for the truth, in that Jesus has brought the truth and you must make your minds ready to receive it. But how was it used in Roman times? And how would you gird your loins in Roman times? Well, there's a nice little description on the website Real Armour of God, and it says how to gird your loins. This was accomplished by pulling up the fabric of the knee-length tunic, so the length in front stopped at your upper thigh, and collecting the excess material in your front, you pull the material forward so the back of your tunic is snug against your backside. Next, you tuck the extra front material down between your legs, gather it up behind you. At this point, you collect half the material behind you evenly on each side of your back, left and right. The final step involves wrapping each side of the material around your waist and tying it together in front. It sounds quite a performance, doesn't it? But it's nowhere near as difficult as it sounds. It's just when you're wearing like a dress type thing, if you're getting ready to go into battle, you'll want all that material out of the way, so you're just pulling it up and tying a knot in it. And hopefully it'll keep everything sort of fastened in and safe while you go into battle. So there you are. If ever you feel the need to gird your loins, you now know how to do it.
Thank you, Jim, for getting us up to speed on girding our loins. I mentioned Jim's terrific History Zine podcast in Genealogy Gems episode number 39, and you can find the podcast in iTunes and at his website, at historyzine.com. Well, the time is here, and I get to announce the winner of the Ancestor Handwriting Analysis Drawing. Folks who signed up for the premium membership were eligible for an analysis of a sample of one of their ancestors' handwriting by certified graphologist Paula Sassy. So, the winner is, drum roll please, Melissa Roberge. Melissa has won an analysis of one of her ancestors' handwriting samples, which will be featured in an upcoming Genealogy Gems podcast episode. Congratulations, Melissa. But wait, thanks to Paula's generosity, I have an extra prize I get to award to a young lady who took the time to write a terrific post in the Premium Members Forum. I asked members if they've started looking through their research for ancestor handwriting samples and which one they would choose to have analyzed if they won. Well, we're awarding Diana Larson with an analysis prize so that she can have a postcard written by her great-grandfather Elbert analyzed. Here's what Diana wrote. Let me tell you, Lisa, ever since I listened to the episode with Paula Sassy, I have been digging through all of my old family papers to see what kind of handwriting examples I can find. I have a few letters that my father wrote to his parents while in Korea and Japan during the Korean War, as well as one of their replies to him. The letters are fascinating to read. However, I'm not sure how good they are for analysis, seeing that all but one letter was written with my father's non-dominant left hand due to battle wounds he received in his right arm. I have quite a few samples of my maternal grandmother's handwriting, her high school memories written out in a small booklet, my mother's baby book, etc. I also recently found a postcard written by my maternal great-grandfather to his twin sister, as well as a postcard written by my maternal great-grandmothers to one of her siblings. This is all in addition to signatures found on World War I draft cards on Ancestor.com. Based on what I've found so far, I think I'd probably like to have my great-grandfather Elbert's postcard analyzed. Not only would it be fascinating for me to learn about this ancestor's personality, but I think it would be very interesting for my aunt and my mother as well. Great-grandpa Elbert was killed in an accident years before they were born, so neither one of them were able to meet that grandparent. Well, Diana, Paul and I are really happy to make your request come true, and we'll be featuring that analysis in an upcoming episode as well. So again, congratulations to Melissa and Diana. And now here's another portion of my interview with Paula Sassy. This time, I only had the signature of my husband's great-grandfather. I wasn't as fortunate as with my own grandfather, where I had a page from a letter he wrote, as well as an envelope that he signed and addressed. So I wasn't too sure how much Paula would really be able to tell me about Lars Johan Larsson. The signature, which you can find in the show notes for this episode, is actually a pretty unusual one. Lars signed his name as the enumerator on the 1900 U.S. federal census for Sibley County, Minnesota. Now, I suppose I could have sent her an entire census page, which of course was full of his handwriting, but I figured that many of you also may just have a signature on a document to work from and not the luxury of an entire page. So let's listen in and see what Paula had to say about this 100-year-old plus signature.
Now, the other sample that I gave you was one that I don't have any other handwriting samples from L.J. Larsson. And L.J. was Lars Johan Larsson, and he was my husband's great-grandfather. What's interesting is, as I mentioned to you before, and as our listeners know, we're constantly seeing handwriting in these documents that we are pulling up looking for sources for our ancestors' information. Now, the census would not normally be a document that we could use for this because although there's a ton of handwriting, it's not our ancestors. But in this case, LJ was the enumerator for his town in a little town called Winthrop, Minnesota. So I have his signature because he signed the line that said that he was the enumerator in 1900. So it's not a lot of handwriting, but what did you kind of glean from that?
Oh, well, he has a very interesting handwriting. he's like 180 degrees from your great-grandfather. Lars was probably pretty well educated. His signature is what we would call high form level.
Mm-hmm.
He's very competent, and then he connects every letter. He connects the L, the J, and the next L, shows that he had leadership ability. And with that L in Larson, he kind of underlines his name. So he had an air of self-importance as well.
Ah.
And then the loops in the J can be looked at as like two money bags. So he was, very responsible financially, probably a very good businessman, and very nice, too. He's got a nice right slant and kind of rounded handwriting, so he had a lot of charisma. You can see why they elected him mayor of the town.
Okay. Oh, but yeah, to me it looked like a very lovely signature.
Yes.
Particularly for a man, it was still very pleasing to the eye.
Yeah, that's charisma side. He's got the leadership, but he's also can schmooze with people and charm them.
Fascinating, because yes, he definitely ended up in a leadership role as mayor. But it's interesting you say the money bags, because in this little town, his family owned a lot of the businesses. He had a hardware store. Well, it was started as a lumber business, turned it into a hardware store, and it was a very thriving business by the time he passed away. So that's really interesting to be able to see that in that.
Well, that's his motivation, the motivation for financial gain, but also he had the intelligence and leadership skills and management skills to make it work.
Right. But you still see a kindness in that handwriting as well.
Definitely. Yeah,
okay.
Like I said, a charmer. Whereas in your great-grandfather's writing, I don't think money was that important to him. Love was more important to him.
Yes.
Because that's what he didn't have.
Right.
And, with a name like Lars Johan, I guess he was, first or second generation immigrant?
Yes, his father, actually, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank, but I'm pretty sure he actually was born in Sweden, but came over as a young child.
Of course. And why do you come to America, right?
Right.
The American dream, and to become rich and well off. And so he was living the American dream.
Absolutely. In fact, his father, right around 1900, became a state senator for Minnesota shortly before his death. So there must have been some real motivation there.
Isn't this interesting, and how we all come together?
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
Well, and that's fascinating that it sounds like almost each piece of these letters of the name told you something.
Oh, definitely. I can analyze check marks.
Really?
Or X's. It's all going to, any stroke made with a pen or pencil can be analyzed. Now, I can't do an in-depth report, but it tells me something.
Now here's a quick rundown on what's new in the Genealogy Gems Premium membership area. In Premium episode number 1, we covered my newest favorite feature of Google, which is the Google Toolbar. I'll walk you through step by step on how to set it up and some neat features that may not be obvious, but that will speed up your online researches tremendously. In episode number 2, we do an in-depth study of the Records of the Works Progress Administration, the WPA, which was in operation during the Depression, with WPA expert and national genealogy speaker Paula Stewart Warren. It's a real treat to have her to ourselves for this episode to really explore the vast WPA records. And as a special bonus feature for members, Paula is making available her 4-page reference guide on the WPA. If a record is out there, this guide is going to show you how to find it. The guide, called The WPA Era, What It Created for Genealogists, will be available for download in the Premium episode number 2 show notes. And in Premium episode number 3, we take off our genealogy hat and we put on our private eye deerstalker hat to cover 7 key strategies from a professional genealogist that will help you find your living relatives. I am living proof that these techniques work because I was able to locate recently a relative that I have been trying to find for years. And when she came to my front door, she brought with her a treasure trove of old family photos. And many of them were from the old country, if you will. So I am really excited about bringing these ideas to you. If you'd like to become a premium member, there's still time to take advantage of the 20% off the annual subscription price by signing up for the Genealogy Gems newsletter. So if you'd like to receive it, just send me an email at genealogygemsnewsletter@gmail.com with your name, state, or country, and how you first heard about the podcast, and we'll get that right out to you. This offer is good through May 31st of 2008. This gem is that very special announcement that I promised you at the beginning of this episode. You know, podcasting has been such a fun medium to work in, and I'm having a blast sharing gems with you and hopefully adding to your motivation to keep persisting in your research. Well, one of my favorite genealogical resources, one of the places I go to for information and motivation, is Family Tree Magazine. I love that it's packed with real, usable information, and they like to have a little bit of fun too. Well, that's why when Allison Stacy, editor-in-chief of Family Tree Magazine, approached me about producing and hosting their brand new Family Tree Magazine podcast, I jumped at it. That's right. I am so pleased to announce that your humble genealogy podcasting gal will be the producer and host of the new Family Tree Magazine podcast. And don't worry, this is in addition to all of the things we're doing over here at Genealogy Gems. This is just one new great avenue for you to get good information. Family Tree Magazine will be blazing new trails for being the first genealogy magazine to deliver even more great information through podcasting. We'll be publishing a free half-hour monthly show that will first be available on the Family Tree Magazine website, and then down the road, you'll find that it'll be listed in iTunes as well. So let me tell you about the good stuff we're going to be bringing you. Each episode, we'll be checking in at the editor's desk with Allison Stacy. And this is going to be your chance to get kind of a sneak peek look at what's coming, as well as new offerings on the website. Here's a little clip from our conversation from episode 1. Hi, Allison.
Hi, Lisa.
It is so fun to be working with you now on the new Family Tree Magazine podcast. So let's start with maybe sharing with our listeners what your inspiration was for publishing the podcast.
Well, the neat thing about podcasting is it gives us a new platform to share our advice and instruction from the magazine and additional instruction and advice that maybe we can't share in the magazine because the format just doesn't lend itself to it. With a podcast, you can listen in places you can't read a magazine, like the car, at the gym, while you're shopping or doing yard work. You just load it up on your iPod or computer and you listen whenever it's convenient to you. The podcast also will give us an opportunity to have a little more personal forum for our audience. We can give you a behind-the-scenes look at what we do and the topics we cover. And last but not least, we hope to reach and inspire a new audience eager to discover their family histories and have fun doing it.
Then managing editor Diane Haddad will share some of her favorite items in the News from the Blogosphere segment. And since the magazine will soon be publishing its 101 Best Websites for Genealogy, in the first episode, Allison will share one of her top picks, and we'll talk about some unique features of that website that you might not be aware of. And of course, because Family Tree has such a reservoir of great material in each episode, we'll have a Best of Family Tree Magazine segment. Now, this first episode will feature my interview with Sharon DiBartolo-Carmack, who will take on the topic of brick walls head on. Here's a clip.
The more you research, the more your knowledge changes, the more your experience changes. And sometimes when you gather that record the first time, like say a census record, you weren't really paying attention to who the neighbors were. You were just focused on the ancestor. Well, a couple years later, as you're doing more research, you may find those neighbors were actually relatives of your ancestor or married into the family. And then going back to that census record, you go, geez, they were living right next door. I never even noticed that. So it really does pay off.
Sharon has a new article on brick walls coming up in the July 2008 issue and was a major contributor to the Family Tree Magazine Guidebook special issue for 2006 that was devoted to the subject of brick walls. And finally, I'll be interviewing Maureen Taylor, author of Family Tree Magazine's Photo Detective blog, in the Top Tips segment. It's going to be a jam-packed half hour that you won't want to miss. Allison and Diane are announcing the podcast at the NGS conference this week as I'm recording, and the first episode will be soon to follow. I'll be announcing the date and the web page as soon as it's available in the Genealogy Gems podcast newsletter. So if you haven't subscribed to that yet, now's a good time. Just go to the website at genealogygems.tv and click newsletter. It's free. So there you have it. I'm excited and I'm honored to have the opportunity to help bring even more genealogy content to you with the Family Tree Magazine podcast. Well, we've come to the end of a very full episode of the Genealogy Gems podcast. As always, I'm so honored that you chose to spend this time listening. I hope you enjoyed our little walk back in our childhood. And be sure and check out Birthday Alarm. That could turn out to be a really useful site. Now, I know many of you are on the road or exercising while you listen, so be sure and check in on the show notes for this episode when you get home. And I'll have all the info and all the links that we covered today there waiting for you. And that's where you can also register for the free newsletter, where you'll get the 20% discount on your annual Genealogy Gems Premium membership, which is going to be available through May 31st, 2008, just 2 more weeks. And as always, I just love hearing from you. Now, I know we have a lot of new listeners out there, and I'll tell you what I've told the old timers. Getting your emails lets me know that I'm not just sitting here talking to myself. So write me with comments, stories, show ideas, whatever you're up to at genealogygemspodcast@gmail.com. So until next week's premium episode and next month's free Genealogy Gems podcast episode, thanks for listening, friend, and I'll talk to you soon.